So we can go ahead and get started as some more folks continue to trickle in. Welcome to iNACOL's April Leadership Webinar. We are thrilled to have you all with us today. We will be exploring communication and outreach strategies for leaders who are shifting towards personalized learning. And my name is Natalie Abel. I'm a program manager here at iNACOL, and I'll be helping to facilitate today's webinar. So before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items to go over with you today. In the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you should see a chat box. So if you haven't done so already, please introduce yourself. We would love to know who you are, where you're tuning in from, what you're hoping to learn today, and also any other insights or feedback that you might have that you can share with us as we go throughout the webinar. We also encourage you to ask a lot of questions. We'll be sure to pause as we go and save some time for Q&A. So don't be shy, ask a lot of questions, and I can help facilitate the Q&A portion of today's webinar as well. Today's webinar will be recorded and archived. So we'll send you all an email after the webinar today with a link to all of that information, so you can refer back to this entire recording, or you can download the slides at any point in the future as well. And we also encourage you to share what you're learning on social media. So we'll drop some information into the chat box if you'd like to connect with our presenters today, and share what you're learning with your networks there as well. So with that, I am happy and grateful to have Anna Hall from Springpoint joining us today, Danny Medved from the Denver School of Innovation and Sustainable Design, Carlos Beato from the International High School at Langley Park, Brian Malkin from CICS Irving Park, and Chris Liang-Vergara from LEAP Innovations as presenters today. And I will not take up any more of your time. So I will now turn it over to Anna to get us started. So Anna, if you want to go ahead and click the talk button, it's all you.
Hi everyone. Natalie, thank you so much for bringing this lovely and impressive crew of people together. I'm really excited to be part of our conversation today and so glad to be here. My name is Anna Hall. I'm the Senior Director here at Springpoint. Our organization, just a bit of background for those of you who don't know us, is pretty straightforward. We're a nonprofit organized to support partners who include districts and charters and all sorts of other organizations engaged in the work of school design. And our support in that effort encompasses both helping to develop concepts for new design and also to support projects through the life of a sort of design, launch, and growth sequence over time. I'm really excited to be joined today by Danny Medved, the principal of the Denver School of Innovation and Sustainable Design, one of our partners, and Carlos Beato, also principal from International High School at Langley Park. Danny and Carlos, I wonder if you guys can quickly introduce yourselves and your schools before we dive into our work.
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Danny Medved. Have been in DPS for about 10 years in charter and innovation schools. Had the opportunity to work with Springpoint through the Carnegie Corporation Opportunity by Design initiative to redesign schools around mastery and based and personalized learning systems. And it's been a dream. And so we're about 3.5 years into the work from the initial concept. We've got 2 grades of kids right now. We run about 100 students per grade level. We're excited to be adding our 11th grade and our upper house experience next year.
All right. Hi, everyone. Carlos Beato. I am the principal at the International High School at Langley Park and also partners with Springpoint. Our school is in its 2nd year. We have 1st and 2nd year students. They're all English language learners or former English language learners. So we are all about empowering our English language learner population to be able to achieve at the same or higher levels as any student in the Prince George's County Public School system.
Thank you, Danny, Carlos, and thanks for joining us. So we'll start with just a quick overview of a few of the things that we, Springpoint as an organization, focus on with our partners as they're building towards personalized learning design to provide a frame. And then Danny and Carlos will take you through concretely what that looks like in action and all of the amazing ways that they iterate and have their ideas evolve over time. So one of the reasons that we're really excited to be here is that our sort of central commitment to school design is grounded in this idea that schools themselves should be built around students and their needs, which is sort of the notion of personalized learning expanded in a macro context beyond just the classroom, but in thinking about the design of the school. Our approach to school design is informed by much of the work of design thinking, which is based on the premise that you would build around a user's need, and in our case, you would build centrally around the needs of students. That process is, as you can see in this graph here, a pretty simple one, and it is iterative and repeats. We start with helping folks develop a really strong understanding of who students are and what they need and what their expectations of school are and what their ambitions are over the course of their lives. Then we work with teams to develop designs that uniquely respond to that understanding and are shaped by that. And then we work with partners to develop those ideas and concretize them and bring them to life, and then continue to iterate over time. As we're supporting folks through the process of developing school designs that are grounded in student identity, student needs, and student ambitions in this way, there are sort of 5 questions that we walk through with our partners together in thinking about what the student learning experience needs to encompass. And those questions are here. Those of you who have spent any time thinking about instructional design will recognize the influence of understanding by design in this process. It's basically that approach, again, writ large, thinking about school design as a whole concept beyond just an individual classroom. And so the 5 questions that we ask folks to think about are here. We want to start with the big 2, the learning milestones and the learning standards and scope and sequence. And the big picture there is, where are kids going? What are the end goals? And we think both about the outcomes that we would hope to see, that students would hope to achieve by the end of graduation or by the time of graduation, in preparation for college and career success and everything they do after their high school experience. And then working backwards from that, what are the essential milestones that you would want to name for each year of the student's or phase of the student's experience within a school. Then we think very carefully about assessment practices. How would you measure a student's progress towards those end goals? And building on that, how would you develop a learning program and a set of learning experiences that help make sure kids make progress towards the milestones at a pace that will ensure their success? And then finally, we ask folks to think really concretely about measurement and communication. The reason this last question is such an essential one is for all sorts of obvious reasons that we can name, but also because one of our sort of core organizational commitments is to the idea of helping to design schools that are founded on principles of positive youth development and that are really anchored in systems that support student agency, student voice, student pursuit of their own interests and passions. And within that, a personalized learning experience is something of a necessity. And in order to get to that end, we believe that transparency is really essential. Kids can't make decisions about their own lives fundamentally if they don't understand the context and the options and the outcomes of possible choices. And so transparency around all of those pieces, both of a student's learning experience within a school, but also of their broader experience and the trajectory of their education, are really essential elements. So we believe that this measurement and communication piece is essential, which is why one of the reasons we're happy to be talking about this today with everybody. And we believe that it needs to be developed in concert with and close alignment with the decisions that you make with these other 5 questions. This is a quick example of concretely one way that we invite folks to think about that, looking at how the answers to those questions would evolve over time. I think at this point I'm actually going to pause because I wanted to give a sense of the context of school design and the big umbrella of purpose, but I want to make sure we protect some time for Danny, for you and Carlos, to talk about what this concretely looks like in practice, and when we talk about personalized learning, what it means, and then also when we talk about the need to communicate and create transparency, what that looks like. So I will pause and pass the mic, Danny, I think, to you.
All right, thank you, Anna. So, yeah, as far as the design work that Springpoint has really helped us do is I think the key has been to take us from a vision and concept to concrete experiences that are time-bound, that we all have a common understanding of, and that's all stakeholders, so staff, students, parents, and then business and community partners. And so one thing we're very proud of that we actually spent a large amount of time of in our 0 year was getting clear on our vision. We wanted a vision that was universal, but that was also personalized. And so everything we do at our school, you can map back to that vision to empower all students to own their learning, shape their dreams, and create a better world. And so within that, as students and families begin to consider our school, the 4 key tenets are every student at DSISD gets access to high-value learning opportunities. Those are things like concurrent enrollment classes, advanced placement classes, a project-based learning approach, career experiences, et cetera, as well as in addition to teaching a rigorous academic program, we explicitly have elements of the school built around teaching students to own their learning and have agency, and I can talk about specific structures of that. All of this is really leveraged around this idea of students having autonomy in shaping their dreams and really designing their dream career plan and adult plan so that they can go lead as citizens and leaders for sort of a better world. And so that's sort of the ethos of the school that all of our systems work towards. And that's really when we meet with students and parents that we always begin and end with the vision. And we talk about explicitly like how that happens. And so there's some ways that we very targeted induct students, parents, key stakeholder groups. It starts with pre-enrollment. So we have open house and shadow days that are actually pretty robust compared to those traditional structures. We do what we call launch night and launch week as an induction for families and students into a pretty dramatically different high school experience. And that's our first week of school. In the fall and spring, we run student-led conferences. Again, there's a whole codified format for those. And on Mastery Night, and I think this deck is live, each of these should have hyperlinks in them where I shared some of the resources that we use to drive those. And then on Mastery Night is when we're about 2 months into the school year, usually right around just beyond student-led conferences, families hear, oh, wow, here's my student's grade. This is way different than what I've seen before. I'm a little nervous. We invite them back within a few weeks and we run Mastery Night where we put them in the driver's seat of a teacher and student and actually have them use our competencies, grade and give feedback and score and kind of understand what competency-based and mastery-based learning means. And then sort of the final piece is moments for celebration and our demonstrations of learning, which we run at winter and basically at the end of each semester. So a deeper look into each of these. Our open houses and our shadow days, so you can see the black and white photo there. We've done like a community-wide egg drop challenge to get parents and students really collaborating and working on a design challenge together. In our open houses, we actually break students and parents up sometimes, and we'll have them talk about like what would your dream learning experience have in it. Students, what do you want out of high school? Parents, what do you want? And then we can build upon that to talk about what our program does. Our shadow experience is actually a half-day experience where students get to be a part of advisory. They get paired with a student ambassador. They attend several of our block classes, and then they actually get to have a project that's facilitated by one of our STEM teachers. They actually do 2 different projects, get to play with a little technology. As far as launch week, the format there is we actually have students engage. They spend a lot of time that first week with their advisor and their advisory. We're building community and culture. We're talking about the norms of the school. We're really getting into what is the DSISD vision and how does that come to life in your life specifically as a student. We do talk about things like grad requirements, grading, the instructional approach, and then some technical things, how to use the learning management system, how to check your grades. And then we do a study that whole week, a project around agency, where we talk about what is learner agency, why does it make a difference. They're using our LMS, so they're actually learning how to navigate our learning management system, and it culminates with them actually creating an agency space at their house, this idea that if you're going to direct your learning, you should have a learning space that's conducive to your interests, and they basically set up and they'll take a picture and then they present that to their advisory. On launching it with parents, we do kind of a barbecue format. Families come out. There's a whole group kind of introduction about what we're about and the role of a parent to help their child be successful. We're transparent this whole first week that, guys, this is going to be hard. You're relearning. You got to be a proactive learner and not a passive learner. We have supports to support that, but expect change, expect challenge. Here are your supports, the advisor. Here's how your teachers are going to work. We actually induct parents into how grading works, the 4-year view, so that they can have confidence that even though a child's going to a personalized learning school for 4 years, they're still going to get a high-quality transcript that keeps many college options open. So those are kind of introductory events is how we like to look at those. They all happen really within either prior to enrollment or the very beginning. And then we like to think about kind of progress monitoring events. So student-led conferences are a huge benchmark, especially for our new families. They usually come about 6 to 8 weeks into the school year. The student has had enough time that they're starting to figure it out. Generally, they've probably gone through a little bit of positive stress trying to figure out how to learn in a personalized model. And they actually guide the conference. They prepare the script. The advisor really just facilitates and helps students prepare for that 2 to 3 weeks prior. It's a Q&A, and it's really the student teaching the parent and reminding the parent what their daily experience has been like at the school. And that's so as the spring student-led conference is actually used as not as an induction, but more so as a looking ahead. And so we leverage that to get students to begin picking their electives, and more importantly, to think about their upper house experience where they're going to be at our school only 50 to 80% of the time, brick and mortar, and then they're out in the community learning and residencies, internships, career-based work, service work. And then the other key piece is I mentioned Parent Mastery Night, and there's basically a protocol we take teachers through, almost like a looking at student work protocol. We have them grade, and it's real powerful because we give them 2 samples, and actually the higher quality sample is one that has gone through a large amount of revision because of the benefits of competency-based ed, and it's actually a second language learner who's maybe 3-4 years in, whereas the less quality sample is a gifted learner that has a lot of ability but has not taken advantage of some of the competency-based components, and so it's kind of a paradigm shift, getting parents to see that the work of a mastery-based school is revision and providing opportunities for students to refine work, and that's what the school is all about, and that's what our grading policies are about. And then I did share, and you can see the middle picture, our demonstrations of learning are actually a time where we have students showcase some of their highest impact projects. We also do like a talent show at the end of it where a lot of our student voice and choice electives can kind of share what they've been doing. And it's really just a celebration at the end of each term, middle and end of the year, and kind of just a fun place to come together. Some other engagement structures that we use are I do a monthly coffee with principal. It's a little more informal. We'll have parent LMS training coupled with that, or just sort of a Q&A format. We do have parents who have voice and governance in shaping our school's direction. And then we do a film screening, for example, Most Likely to Succeed, to kind of help talk about like how personalized learning is being shaped nationally. As we move forward, going into year 4, I guess, as far as our work together, but year 3 as far as operation, we're really looking at trying to move towards more wraparound supports. So we have a partnership with Maury Neighborhood Center. We want to run a parent monthly academy that really helps parents understand how to be proactive in personalized learning and supporting key college readiness and planning benchmarks. So that's a quick overview on how we induct our stakeholders at DSISD. I guess that's it, and I don't know if questions are at the end, but yeah, that's how we do it.
That was awesome. Thank you. Carlos.
All right. So I will take it on from here. Carlos Beato again, International High School at Langley Park. At IHSLP, we're all about creating personalized learning pathways to help students develop critical thinking skills, language proficiency, and then touching back on that piece that Danny mentioned, that student ownership of their learning, which for an English language learner can sometimes be triple as hard as any average student because they're coming with many other pieces of social-emotional baggage that they're dealing with if they have crossed the border or if, you know, they haven't learned the English language yet because they just got here last week. So in working with English language learners, our community partnerships are very pivotal in helping us meet every child's needs. So our vision is centrally focused on the community playing a pivotal role. And so it really helps us think about how we help students navigate their communities, which for many of them are new communities that they're learning about, that they're learning to survive in, they're learning to live and make a daily part of their lives. I think personally that it all starts with the leader and their character strengths, and walking into this and opening and founding this school, knowing that relationships is not one of my strengths, being a relator is not one of my strengths, and knowing that I had to hire people that would be able to do that and help me navigate that side of the education system. And so my assistant principal is all about the woo. My social worker and counselor, they're all relators. My parent outreach caseworker is a relator and a communicator. And so working off of those strengths, I've been able to have them manage different things in different capacities to make these relationships work with our partners. So all that to say, that it starts with the hiring process for us, and we have a really strenuous process where, for example, teachers are currently in the hiring process and going through what we call our phase 1, which is our group interviews. A lot of our teachers in Prince George's County are not used to being a part of group interviews, but it allows us to see who can collaborate, who can adapt to different sorts of situations, and who can come out and show out as a leader, who is a leader. And we're not looking for people who are taking over things all the time, but who can manage and navigate through the different systems that we have in our school. One of the things that we do is we try to match everything to our core values of empowerment, critical thinking, and collaboration, EC squared for short. And to start off, we have a number of partnerships that allow us to meet our lofty goals and allow us to bring this vision to life. And so starting with empowerment, we have partnerships with the University of Maryland, World Lens Foundation, KIND, and I Learn America, and they sort of work as this one entity that allows students to bring their immigration stories to life. And so it's been really powerful to empower our students from that perspective because they get to tell their stories in a way that in a comfortable environment where they know they're not being judged. They know that other students have had similar experiences, and even students with vastly different experiences, a refugee versus a student who has crossed the border through Mexico. And so it allows for students, on the one hand, through I Learn America, to be able to write about their stories, to be able to put it out there. Some of them having lived very traumatic experiences, but just letting it go and having our social worker there as a support system in case those things trigger any of those sentiments again. Our World Lens Foundation allows students to tell their stories through photography, and so I think, you know, not all students are writers and can express themselves from that perspective. So sorry for our bell, it's the end of the day. But the World Lens Foundation allows our students to tell their story through photography. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to give students access in different ways and to be able to use their different skills and capacities to tell their stories. We move on to collaboration. So Casa de Maryland has been a supporter of our work from the very beginning. They were actually part of the grant when it was submitted to Carnegie, and so they really help us provide with the whole student, meeting the whole student. Anything from health care to the students needing immigration help, to the students needing representatives to go with them to certain locations and places, and providing students with different opportunities like internships. Soccer Without Borders, we're lucky enough to be the first site out of Baltimore to engage in providing students with soccer and academic support outside of school hours. And so for my school, soccer is a very important part of the school. And if we didn't have Soccer Without Borders, then we'd be doing no good for these kids. Because Soccer Without Borders really helps to take some of those kids that have really struggled with traditional academic environments, haven't done really well, and takes them and puts them into this place where they can actually see themselves as being successful because they're being provided with support from their colleagues, from our SWB coordinator, and other teachers that participate in the program. So that's collaboration. And then for critical thinking, and actually La Clínica del Pueblo was supposed to be part of our collaboration because the Clínica del Pueblo helps us meet some of our more, some of the students that have more traumatic experiences. So we have whole family development, not just whole student. And it helps us really think about those kids that haven't seen their parents for about 10 years. And that's a lot of our kids' stories. So they're dealing with not just being in a new country, being in a new city, and having to learn how education is done here, but they're also trying to navigate their life, their family life, because they haven't seen their parent and they live with grandma or aunt and uncle, or vice versa. They've left their family at home back in their country, native country, and they're here with a family friend or their uncle, cousin. So that's a part of who we are that may not necessarily be true to many schools in our country. And so we're very proud to say that we have some of those supports to help serve that. With our critical thinking, we have our World Smart STEM Challenge that we were just a part of. And we were actually third place finalists out of 16 partnerships to 16 schools. And so for us, that was a really important win. Even though we were not first or grand prize winner, third place was really awesome for us because to have a group of English language learners, some who have only been here a year, to make it that far in the competition where they were competing against prestigious schools in the DC area, just shows how much empowerment and can do for a student. And then we have concurrent enrollment with Bowie State University, and as well as a current partnership with our neighboring high school to be able to provide students with career technical education. We know that there are many things that our kids want to be doing, but that we can't offer because of the nature of our small school. And so we look for opportunities that allow us to expand on what we know our kids need. And so that's a little bit about us and what we provide our students at the International High School at Langley Park. And you can look us up at IHS Langley Park on Twitter, and you can add our school.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos, and thank you, Danny. This is Anna again. Just for those of you, I thought some folks were coming in as we were chatting to do a quick recap. My name is Anna Hall. I'm from Springpoint. Our little crew here of 3 folks has been talking about the importance of communication and systems to support communication in a personalized context. Our Springpoint focus as an organization, because we support folks through the design process, is really on the overall school design and the systems. And Danny, it was very helpful to have you walk through within a school what systems are in place to particularly engage with students and with parents in the interest of making the learning experience and the systems that wrap around it very transparent to stakeholders. Carlos, thank you so much for walking us through the importance of bringing in partners from outside of the school to help support the work and embed in it. And I think in that context as well, communication is really essential. And so if I were going to take a stab at synthesizing these big points, I would say that in every context, designing the concept of a school, designing the learning experiences at a school, designing for the culture and the community that wraps around those learning experiences, it's incredibly important to have the student live at the center of those designs and to make sure that the designs themselves are personalized and reflect what students need. And then it's really essential to make sure that you build for transparency and access and collaboration with community and with stakeholders around supporting those. So that is where we landed. I will now pass the baton over, I think, Brian, to you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Anna, and thank you, Natalie and Nicole, for inviting us to this webinar. I'm very excited to talk about my work at Distinctive Schools. I'm the Director of Finance and Operations for Distinctive. We are a charter manager. Here in Chicago, we manage 4 campuses that are K-8, as well as 2 campuses in Minnesota. And I'm joined by Chris Vergara at LEAP Innovations, a strong partner of ours, who's going to chime in just a minute and talk about some of the work that we do with them. So I'll start by talking about a lot of my work with the Irving Park campus, and then Chris will get into how LEAP facilitates that. We'll talk a little bit about our design anchors and our implementation of personalized learning, family engagement strategies, and learner profiles. So the Irving Park story. In 2012, Distinctive Schools assumed management of the Irving Park campus. I was actually teaching 4th and 5th grade at that campus at this time. It was very much traditionally instructed. If you were to walk through the hallways, you'd see tape on the floor, students walking in single file lines. In classrooms, it was whole group instruction, sage on the stage, high performing charter, but the student engagement and frankly the teacher engagement really wasn't there. I remember getting a textbook curriculum type thing from the network and being asked to teach an objective or 2 for say 30 days, adding fractions for 30 days to my 4th graders, and then given an assessment to give between the 25th and 30th day, and feeling challenged because on the 4th or 5th day of the block, I had 4 or 5 students that were ready to pass and showed mastery over that skill. And then on the 30th day, when I was forced to give the exam, I still had students who weren't ready to take it and needed some more time. And so Distinctive came in with this vision of personalized learning. Another story I like to tell for why we wanted to personalize the learning experience. I remember my last year in the classroom, one of my students who was performing in the 95th percentile, I remember, in both reading and math. Brilliant student, came up to me with a broken paperclip, interrupting my small group lesson and said, "Mr. Malkin, what do I do with this broken paperclip?" And it struck me that we were really preparing our students to be compliant and not to be prepared. You know, here's a student who can ace any exam I give her, but finds a broken paperclip in the floor and doesn't know what to do with it. And so it's like training to ask the teacher at every moment. And so we had this vision to transform the learning experience for our kids, and cue this partnership with LEAP Innovations in Chicago, who really helped us take off. So I'll let Chris sort of walk through what LEAP is, and then I'll get into more specifics about how some of our work was done on campus.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. I want to say it's been cool just with Springpoint and everything. That's just really great minds think alike. So it's awesome to see a lot of the parallels of the work. And I would also, I think Brian said it really well, of just what an evolution occurred at CSCS Irving Park. So I'll jump through these a little bit accelerated, just to set the context for everyone, and then Brian can get into some of the details and stories of their work. So LEAP, we're a nonprofit based in Chicago. We run a number of core programs, with research being a big part of that. And Irving Park was specifically involved in our pilot network around sort of a small micro innovation within the school, and then also breakthrough schools, which is really full school transformation and a big philanthropic program for us. For LEAP, we ground everything in terms of our research and professional development and support around the LEAP learning framework, which has been an ongoing project for us on just really what's the big experiences in a personalized learning setting. Our learner focus is essentially whole child learner demonstrated, competency-based progression, learner-led around the student agency, and then learner-connected. Very much learning is beyond the four walls of the classroom, and how do you get it out into the real world and connected to communities and real-world applications. So for the pilot network aspect, which is where we started with Irving Park, it begins with identification of a need, and there is an edtech side for LEAP around where does technology play a role for scaling these personalized learning experiences. From there, the teams worked with us from January to June, so it's a semester-long professional development in a cohort setting. Our current cohort is 33 schools from around the city. At the time of Irving Park, it was 15 schools, and we believe a lot in the community and the kind of cross-sharing. From there, they then pilot for an entire school year. We provide a certain level of classroom coaching and support along with the research side. And we see our role as a catalyst with the schools because the context is huge and it varies a lot school to school. They know their communities and students and local values much better than we do. So we serve as a thought partner to really move them through that process. And then from there, considering how do you scale and sustain this over time. So the pilot network is often with 2 to 6 teachers. It really is like a grassroots planting a seed of innovation within the school and trying to actually do it in their context, learning through that to then inform what they might scale from there. Breakthrough schools is then the other program that Irving Park was involved with in Cohort 2. It was a mix of schools from around the city, primarily at-risk students. And LEAP provides 10-month workshops, so going really deep on different aspects of personalized learning and whole school redesign. We bring in a lot of national experts. We also do provide planning grants to the schools, so they have capacity for visiting other schools, time for staff. We do a lot of honestly all-day workshops, bringing people together. So it's a pretty heavy commitment to really dive into it and create this blueprint. And Irving Park was one of the final winners of a school grant of $280K. This is a quick map of just some of the diversity across that cohort from around the city. And going through that, it's not as though we're looking for a cookie-cutter approach, but it will vary a lot section to section. So you can see how some are really moving to university partnerships and interdisciplinary projects, some with CBE, others around dual credits. So they go in a lot of different directions based on where that school and community is at. On a high level, as you think through this, again, echoing some of the stuff from the previous presenters on the human-centered design approach, personalized learning, Making it all happen in the world is some of the harder parts to it. So how do you actually operationalize it and put it into practice? And for those of you thinking through the process, from the community side and the actual part, we start with this sort of empathy and cultivation and stakeholder engagement, just because it's such a really unique experience for your average teacher or principal to go through this level of change and redesign. And so at the very beginning, just getting some really root, who are we serving, a lot of them involved in parents, getting interviews, visiting other models and getting inspired by that. From there, starting to look around space design, incorporating certain level of learned science, and same thing, continuing to communicate that back as they move through the process. Again, September and November, you're then looking into formal change management as you're kind of going back from the lab and this ideation to you're starting to get a little bit more concrete on what this could look like. So cognitive change management theory and others are done with the teams to help them really think about strategically who really need to serve, talk to, and involve, whether it's informed or part of the decision-making process, and that goes to kind of whole school progression development as they move forward. And then finally, into plan refinement, a lot of kind of consultations cross-cohort along with LEAP. And just at the end of the day, it's really driven by what's the why, and then how do you help others get on board with that why going forward. And so I'll pass it back to Brian to really talk about their design anchors and the
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so just double-clicking now on CICS Irving Park and our whole school transformation into this personalized learning model. I thought one of the most helpful exercises we went through with LEAP facilitating that was coming up with design anchors that could sort of filter and focus our decision-making. I think that when you go on these tours or go see exemplar schools or hear about others implementing personalized learning, it's very exciting and easy just to emulate those models. And we had to remember, like Chris mentioned, to go back to our why and why we wanted to personalize and transform the learning experience for our students. And so these three anchors sort of helped us focus that, the first being high expectations, and that all students, teachers, admin, and parents will hold each other accountable through those high expectations. I think there was a culture at the school where teachers wouldn't necessarily trust all of the implementations coming down from the network because there was a history of things sort of falling off the cliff after 1 or 2 months. And so we knew that if we wanted to implement a learner profile or a family innovation night, and teachers were a very strong partner with us in making sure those were successful, we had to make sure that we were going to see everything through. And so that was the first sort of checkbox that we went through when we decided to implement an idea is, we have to make sure we see this through and hold each other to high expectations so it's not one of those things that falls off the cliff, per se. The second was a dynamic mindset. And we wanted to sort of have this mindset permeate to our students and parents where growth is the goal and learning is the goal. And all stakeholders share that commitment. And so one of the things we did was focus on process-oriented feedback instead of product feedback, where students sometimes were used to getting 100% on a test or an A on a test, and then parents and teachers saying, oh, you're so smart, you did so great, Johnny, like, awesome job. And then inherently, if they got an 80% on the next test, they would maybe think that they're somehow stupid because that would be the opposite of the feedback that they received. And so we really transitioned our instruction to focus more on the process rather than the product. That was one of the ways that we fostered that dynamic mindset. And then the last one that I'm going to talk a little bit more about is the idea of creating an awesome, powerful community. And this is really where we started to leverage our families and parents. So we had a few different family engagement strategies that I'm going to go through that really bonded that partnership between us and the families and the community and extending learning beyond the classroom walls. The first being an innovation night. Every month we had an innovation night where parents and families were invited into the classrooms to preview material that would be covered in the next block, reflect on work that students are doing, mastery and progress that they're making, areas where they're struggling, and then just discussing that content in class. There was a lot of time for Q&A with teachers, especially the first year. This new way of learning and even just walking into the classroom and not seeing desks and rows was something that parents were very curious about, and we welcomed that curiosity and loved that they were involved and curious and wanted to learn about this new way that we're teaching. We always went over personalized learning research and went back to the why behind personalized learning with parents and families so that they felt they had an ownership stake in this journey with us. We kept it really engaging. We made these innovation nights something that was not to be missed. Every student wanted to come with their siblings from other schools, families, cousins in town. We made it really fun. We had food trucks parked on the blacktop, window paint, games, food. We had a live Puma podcast. Puma's our mascot, where one of our elective teachers would welcome students and parents in to talk about their personalized learning. What are they learning in class? What are they liking? What they want to share to the listeners, and we air that podcast every month. Our principal would walk around with a selfie stick, and you can see a few of those pictures here, just to make it exciting and accommodate those 21st century learning skills and those learning habits. Our next strategy was parent outreach, and so we'd encourage and incentivize families to actually be present in the classroom. One of our teachers who was teaching in the LEAP pilot actually did a station rotation where students would be introduced to the material, practice it on their own, and then for the application station, actually conference with a parent who uses that skill in their everyday life. I remember having a songwriter come in to one of our classrooms and talk about the importance of drafting and pre-writing and outlining thoughts before a final. And so it's interesting for a student to be able to see that tangible application. And so parent outreach was a really big strategy for us to engage that awesome, powerful community. And then performances and extracurriculars open the door to parent engagement as well. And you can see a few of those pictures on the right. The next strategy was just hosting purposeful events. You know, when we were redesigning the classroom, as you can see here, parents and families were coming in to sort of move the desks out and move this cool new furniture in to foster more small group targeted instruction. And so this was a bonding experience for us, and it sort of also built that sense of collective ownership over this transition. And parents and students felt that excitement around transitioning to personalized learning as much as, if not more, than the teachers and the administrators. And so that was a third strategy that we used. The next one was to design learner profiles. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we wanted somewhere for students to have this up-to-date record of their learning preferences, something that would follow them from grade to grade. We manage K-8 campuses, so we thought it was super important that teachers get to know their students, and students can have somewhere where parents can see their work. And if I flip to the next slide, you can see an image of what those, a snapshot of what those profiles look like. And students can talk about how they access information best, how they engage and express information best, and then just below that, you can't see in this image, is a place for them to post and share their work for their parents. And so parents can like and comment on what students are doing in class, and that also is a way for us to engage them and involve them in the learning experience in between innovation nights. So that was a big strategy for us and something that really helped work submission. And kids who weren't turning in homework were now motivated because they, were asked to post it online where friends and parents can see it, and then we're really excited about doing and turning in their work. Lastly, I just included a few quotes from some of our parents. We surveyed them at the end of the first year and asked them what they thought about this personalized learning transformation and some of the concepts that we covered. These are from some of our 3rd and 4th grade parents in our LEAP pilot. And I think that's it. That's all I had to share today, but happy to answer any questions from the group.
Hi, Brian. Thank you very, very, very much. Now we will go ahead and open it up for questions. So if you have any questions, now is the time to throw them in the chat box, or you can click the talk button at the top left-hand corner of your screen and just go ahead and ask your question out loud. Wow, what a great presentation. Wonderful strategies and examples from different schools and leaders, and really great examples that I hope some of you can take back to your own classrooms and schools to help communicate about this shift to personalized learning. I'm really inspired by your creativity and making sure that you communicate and really engage stakeholders in this shift. You all did a really, really fantastic job. And as some folks type in their questions, I see a couple people typing currently. I will just remind you all that today's webinar will be recorded and archived. So if you want to refer back to any of these great strategies, we'll send you a link in an email, and you'll be able to refer back to these at any time. And I just received a question from Hildy at Arlington Public Schools, and she asked, what strategies are in place for parents who aren't able to come into the school in person? So I'm curious to see if you have any strategies for reaching those types of parents, and anyone is more than welcome to go ahead and jump in.
I can jump in real quick with that, Natalie. So like I mentioned, that learner profile was really key for those parents who either worked at nights or lived very far away and couldn't commute to school, so that they could see what their students were working on, and they could comment and like their work products online on the profile.
So at IHSLP, we actually have language links, and so what we do is every student is attached to an advisor, and if a parent cannot make it to school, let's say for a parent-teacher conference night, the advisor will schedule in a conference call, and if they don't speak Spanish or any other language that our students may speak, they'll call in through the language link and schedule those phone calls and still be able to have those conversations with the families while they're in their second job, or if they're simply home because they have to take care of their small children.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to jump in on that one? If not, we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, great.
I would just say that our advisors, yeah, this is Danny. Again, I think similar to at Carlos School, our advisors play a key role. They're the bridge to the family. They're making weekly communication. They'll often schedule around parents' availability, so on our student-led conferences, or if a parent misses launch night or launch week. For a student who's having more challenges, perhaps, or a pregnant teen student, for example, we will do some home visits as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And Carla Phillips asked a great question. She asked, what are the most frequently asked questions or the myths that your schools might get around personalized learning?
I think particularly at the high school level, parents often have pretty big concerns about, will my child still get into college? There's huge reservations around, what do you mean students are in the same classroom together and they're not leveled, and there's the honors group and the other group. You know, I'm worried about that. That doesn't work. I've had people tell me that, you know, that works. And then what will transcripts look like is another kind of challenge that we see at the high school level, where we have to message around those concerns.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one, or would you like to move on?
I can jump in real quick. I would say just most frequent. This is Ryan from Distinctive. The most frequent question I always got was, does it really work? And so I think it's really important to go over research and data with parents who are generally asking about, you know, what effect does it have on my students' test scores, but also measuring those non-academic habits of success and talking about how a student has progressed in showing perseverance or grit or things like creative know-how that help a student succeed that aren't necessarily on a report card.
And this is Chris at LEAP to follow up. I would totally second that. There's a lot of questions on how do you know this works, which is, we're just huge on the research aspect, and also being honest that we're all learning as we move along. So what are the best practices and aspects of that experience, and being very transparent and share that with others as they move through it. The other thing we see is specifically in the student agency aspect. It seems to be sometimes kind of polarizing, with people either like love it or they're really, really scared about it. And you'll hear sort of say it's turning into a Montessori school, and then that's said in a positive light, and then in a negative light. So it kind of goes back to educating the parents around what it looks like. That's not becoming like a free-for-all classroom. There still are high expectations and scaffolding and mentorship and everything that goes into that. Because if we go back when they start to see these different classroom settings or kids not all being quiet, it just sort of kind of throws them off. And a strategy that we often see work really well is just some level of elevating the student voices. As Brian does with the podcast, with other schools, they'll do recordings, student-led conferences, etc. And it seems like once the parents hear from their kids on how much better the experience is, it kind of quells all those concerns. But it's opening those dialogues and also advocating for the kids and helping the kids learn to advocate for themselves as well.
For us at IHSLP, it's all about how can you do personalized learning with English language learners? Aren't all of your kids, don't all of your kids not know how to speak English? So we're always trying to navigate the questions around our kids actually not all being level 1 English speakers, according to WIDA. And so creating personalized pathways actually makes even more sense for students who are lower level English speakers, because you can really create a pathway and help them create a pathway to help them be successful and navigate our education system.
Great, thank you all. We did have Sarah asked if there was a way that we could share a link to that podcast, so I'm not sure if that's publicly available, but if it is, we'd love for you to throw that in the chat box. That'd be great to go ahead and listen to. And then Jeff had a question around the beginning stages of personalized learning, and he's asking what sort of training or professional development is appropriate for teachers as you embark on this journey. So if anybody wants to go ahead and comment on that quickly.
Yeah, this is Chris at LEAP. I think that's one thing we've learned a lot about since we started our work a few years ago is the beginning stages is all around paradigm and finding the why. I think we've seen early workshops be more concrete and tangible strategies. You get ahead of yourselves, a little bit over your skis, and then as you get into the real world, and there's pushback or learning curves or all that people don't have a good foundation to stand on. So it's kind of reflected in the slides. We do quite a bit to going really deep on paradigm shifting, the why, so that the people doing the designing and the implementing and the leading the community buy-in are really grounded in sight in terms of why they're doing this work and can speak well to it, because that just seems to have really great long-term effects for them driving forward throughout it. So not going too deep into like what furniture we're going to do or strategies or grouping. I think that's sort of part 2 or part 3 of the conversation. Part 1 is having these deeper conversations on what does education mean for us, why are we going to make this change, and those kind of design anchors have been a big win.
Yeah, I would definitely second what Chris just said. This is Brian from Distinctive in building that why. I think also celebrating short-term wins. I think it's a lot of pressure on a teacher at first to completely change their practice and implement this new personalized learning model. And I think that something that we did was just design an implementation plan that started with where we see the school 3 to 5 years down the road, and then backwards mapping and benchmarking behaviors each quarter to have a goal for ourselves that sort of made teachers feel comfortable that, hey, we don't have to be at that 3 to 5 year vision yet, but we're going to try to accomplish this goal this quarter that shows that we're clearly on the trajectory towards that. And so those short-term wins, I think, were really key for us.
Hi, this is Anna. I just want to endorse this practice, Brian. It's such an important one, and to say that what we found in our work at Springpoint is that it's powerfully helpful for those interim milestones to be very transparent to members of the community, to kids, to teachers, to parents, to partners often, so that folks have a sense of forward progress and also can develop some sense of agency within that path because the information is there and it's available.
Great, thank you. And I know we are running out of time, but if you have a couple more minutes, Juliana from Mastery Collaborative in New York City asked a really great question that we get all the time too. So if anybody wants to quickly touch base on this, she's asking, are your transcripts non-traditional? And if they are, how do you ensure that students aren't negatively impacted in the college application process? And how do you communicate this to concerned families?
I could jump on this one first. So I think what's real important as you build buy-in, we've tried to iterate on the fringes. So in one way or another, 70, 80, 90% of what we do is actually traditional and not new, and that's a way to help people gain confidence as they go into the innovation. Our transcripts look the exact same as the traditional flagship high school here in Denver, East High School. What's different is our methods for how we get students. So you'd see a very different instructional approach. Students actually have a window to revise work after the end of a term and before we push to transcript. And so it's a way to give colleges and students and families confidence. It looks the same, but the way that we got there is different. And so I think we looked at districts that went very different, and let alone college challenges here locally. Other high schools, when kids transfer districts, wouldn't accept those dramatically different transcripts. So I think that dramatically different transcript may be a few years down the road, and we weren't ready to be the first to figure that one out.
All right, great. Well, I would just like to say thank you again to our wonderful panelists today. I really, really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise. I certainly learned a lot, so I hope our other attendees did as well. So a huge thank you and a huge gratitude for doing what's best for all kids and to taking on this very difficult work. Thank you, and be sure to check out our website. We have some other great webinars coming up in the next few weeks, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks a lot.